जना गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन यमुनातीरावनचारी यमुनातीरावनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी जय गोपी जनवल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन यमुनातीरावनचारी यमुनातीरावनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री श्रीमद् हिज डिवाइन ग्रेस ऐसी भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी शिल प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam. We're starting a new chapter, chapter 16. Called the description of Jambudvipa. From here on, this section of the Bhagavatam, this canto, can get extremely complicated because it talks about the structure of the universe. Except Siddhartha, no one else is smiling. It is an explanation of the structure of the universe. And it does get into some things, and since I'm not going to be here to relish with you, I want to set a few things for us to start thinking about, and then be prepared for what's going to come. So the fifth canto has 26 chapters. Of these 26 chapters, the first 15 are one section, and the next 11 are another section. So we're going from one section of fifth canto to another section of fifth canto. In the first section of the 15 chapters, there are descriptions about Maharaj Priyavrata, who was the brother of King Uttanapada. In the 4th canto, we heard about King Uttanapada and his son Dhruva Maharaj and life of Dhruva in the 4th canto. And the 5th canto talks about the other son of Swayambhuva Manu. Swayambhuva Manu had many daughters and 2 sons, Priyavrata and Uttanapada. And Priyavrata went to the forest to live a life of a brahmachari. And his brother Uttanapada became the emperor. And after Maharaj Uttanapada died, they wanted Maharaj Priyavrata to become the emperor, but he was a brahmachari. So in the life of a brahmachari, he was called upon to take on a service that was not his nature. And he said, no, I don't want to get involved in being the emperor of a whole planet. I don't want to get involved, and if I have to be an emperor, that means I have a kingdom. If I have a kingdom, it means I have a queen managing the affairs of the kingdom. I don't want to do all this. I'm happy being a brahmachari. And who wants to get involved in all this? So his father, Swayambhuva Manu, and his grandfather, Lord Brahma, both came to convince him to take on this service, telling him that start thinking outside of your own self. Think about others as well. And if you're concerned that you will get entangled in material activities, we promise you that we'll protect you from it. And his spiritual master, Narada Muni, came, and he was trying to keep him brahmachari, but then the need was such. So he said, okay. And Maharaj Priyavrata went on to becoming one of the best emperors planet had ever seen. The spirit here is, it's not whether I like something or I don't like something. Acting on the platform of like and dislike is acting on the platform of the mind. It's the mode of passion. Acting on the platform of duty is goodness. It's elevating. So it's not about I like this service or I don't like this service. The spirit is, this is a service the spiritual master, the superiors are asked me to do, and that's what I will do. And I will not just do it begrudgingly, but I will do it so nicely, because that's the order of the superiors. And then the chapters continue to discussing his descendants, Maharaj Agnidhara in the womb of his wife Nabhi, I think. They had a son. Agnidhara's son was Nabhi, and in the Nabhi and Meru Devi, they had a son called Rishabdev, who was the incarnation of Vishnu. And Rishabdev had also went on to becoming a fantastic king, because after all, he's the personality of Godhead. And he had 100 sons, and all 100 became perfected beings. Hey, that's a good score. Try to get one child to be a perfected being. And I'm a parent. I know what a challenge it is. And in my life, my son is really fantastic. I don't really have such a challenge. Even then it is challenging. What to speak of having a child who's really challenging. Krishna is very kind. He knows I can't make it, so he gave me a good kid. You take care of this fellow. It's good enough. But he had 100 sons, and they were all fantastic. 9 of them became Navayogendras, the great sages who were self-realized. 1 of them became Maharaj Bharat, who we've been talking about. And 81 became fantastic brahmanas and householders that set such fantastic example for the whole world. Then we heard the story of Maharaj Bharat, who was also a wonderful king, but unfortunately got attached to a deer even on the final lap. It's like winning a race and something happens in the final lap. Yeah, something happened in his almost final lap, penultimate lap, that he fell in love with a baby deer and just took care of the deer like a father, and unfortunately had to take on another birth as a deer. But he remembered everything and then was born as Jada Bharat. So he decided to live like a deaf, dumb and blind person, never cared, never spoke to anyone. Even if he was beaten up, he didn't care. They chastised him and he didn't care. And he intentionally did things against the Vedic injunctions. His father told him, "My dear boy, go to the bathroom, take a bath. After that, take a shower." He would take a shower and then go to the bathroom. They would say, "First eat and then you clean up." You would clean up, then eat and make a mess. He would pass stool and urine just where he was standing, just like an animal would. Like, who's this guy? Until he met Maharaj Rahugana, who also treated him like that. "Hey, palanquin carrier." And so he asked, "Who are you? Who are you talking to?" This body is material. And if you're talking about the soul, I'm not a palanquin carrier. You're not a king. We're both parts and parcels of God. And Maharaj Rahugana had such a spin. It's like, who are you? Came out of his palanquin, fell at his feet and said, "Please instruct me on transcendental knowledge." In all those chapters, including the forest of material enjoyment, which, by the way, if you've noticed, we have successfully come out of that forest of material enjoyment, at least theoretically speaking. And now we are entering the second section of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, where the universe is being described. So chapter 16 is the description of Jambudvipa. Why is it important to know about the island called Jambudvipa? Because that's where we are. Some people will argue whether we are in Jambudvipa or Kraunchadvipa, but as we read this description, we'll see that sometimes some Vedic scholars, devotees from different sampradayas or within our sampradaya also, they say Jambudvipa is South Central Asia, where India is. And that's the hub of Vedic knowledge. Some say Jambudvipa is the entire planet Earth. Regardless, the structure is being discussed because that's where we are, right? What's the point in discussing some other planet where we are not? It starts from where we are. And this is the place which we call as Karma Bhumi, or the planet. The earthly realm is where every living entity who takes on a human birth has to come here. Because Krishna describes Brahma Bhuvana Loka. Even if you go to Lord Brahma's planet, you have to come back to Chicago. Punaravartina Arjuna. Mam upetya tu kaunteya punarjanma na vidyate. But if you achieve me, then there is no birth again. And regardless of what species, demigod, animal, Rakshasa, Gandharva, Vidyadhara, Charana, Siddha, doesn't matter. When you take a human birth, you have to come to planet Earth, because this is where we accumulate our karma that decides the next destination. So this is a very, very important place. This is where karmic reactions are completely manifest. As an animal, there's no karma. You're only living it out. Like a tiger, for killing a deer, does not accumulate more karma. But a human being, for killing a deer, accumulates karma. A snake, for biting or swallowing a mouse or a frog, does not accumulate karma. An eagle that flies in the sky and swoops down onto a little rabbit or squirrel or whatever and eats, no karma, because they're just acting by their nature. But the human being, because he has so much freedom to express his volition or free will, he accumulates karma. Because this is the only form where there is the sense of responsibility is very high. We make it or break it in this life as a human being. We make it back to Godhead, or we go back to another species of life, either demigods or animals or birds or insects or aquatics or trees. That's up to us on the basis of our behaviors and our consciousness. And the human beings reside on Jambudvipa. It's called Jambudvipa. Dvipa means island. And Jambudvipa is that island which is which is characterized by a jambu tree. There are many islands in the material realm on the Bhumandala side. There are many islands. There's 7 islands. One of them is called Jambudvipa. And it's coming up. The descriptions are coming up. So it's exciting. Honestly speaking, it's very exciting. My suggestion, as you go through this section of the 5th canto, as we go through this, my suggestion is try not to get bogged down by the details of things, the many details. Try to maintain a big picture and the big picture about what is being described. And tomorrow Daita is going to show all of us a video that puts things into perspective visually. The difficulty is we're going to read something and we're going to imagine something or visualize something. And that's where the problem will arise. And so that's what I want to prepare ourselves. So I'm going to describe what's the section going to look like and how to approach this subject matter. Okay? So 15th chapter talks about the island of Jambudvipa. How Lord Ramachandra when he went back to Godhead, how Hanuman was also involved with him, etc., etc. And there's like different descriptions of all the islands surrounding Jambudvipa. Then chapter 17 talks about how the river Ganges descended to this planet. Because Ganges is a very important river. Why? Because Ganga is the Charanamrit of Lord Vishnu. Every morning we go there and take Charanamrit very respectfully. So within this world, this universe, Charanamrit is available as Mother Ganga, Ganges river. Then the residents of Jambudvipa, they offer prayers to Lord Krishna. Beautiful prayers, very, very nice prayers. Prahlad Maharaj, other wonderful personalities. Then there's a description of Jambudvipa, how Jambudvipa looks. Then chapter 20 talks about the structure of the universe. I'll be here by that time. I hopefully will be there. Then chapter 21 talks about the movements of the sun. How the sun moves along the zodiac. It's a very important description because why? As the sun moves, for us, what happens? For a human being? Days pass by. And as each day passes by, what happens? We get closer to death. We get one day closer to death. And so it's important to know how's the sun moving? How's that affecting us? And when the sun moves, along with the sun, all the planets move. And as all the planets move, they influence the different living entities, they influence the weather, the climate, the conditions on the planet, everything. And more importantly, it is to appreciate how Krishna is the center of everything. The entire universal planetary system is moving around that planet where Lord Vishnu stays, called Shvetadvipa, which is a spiritual planet within the material world. And everything moves around it in a clockwise direction. And it will describe that all the planets are situated around the pole star in the form of a dolphin. And the tail of the dolphin is up and the face down, and the tail is where everything is pivoted and it moves. The whole planetary system moves around the pole star. And great yogis, it's called the Shishumara. The great yogis, every day as part of their meditation, they meditate on the entire universal planetary system, centered around Lord Vishnu. And what's the first realization from that? Minimally, that we are so tiny and insignificant that actually we don't make any difference in the world whether we are alive or dead. Perhaps by being dead we might do less harm to the universe, because by being alive we're doing so bad. But that's basically, we're insignificant. Very, very insignificant. Extremely insignificant. And how beautifully everything is created. So that's chapter 22, then is the orbits of the planets around the sun. Chapter 23 is called the Shishumara planetary system, the dolphin that I was talking about. Then chapter 24 talks about the subterranean heavenly planets. There are planetary systems above the earthly realm. We call the Bhu-loka. Bhu-loka is where the earthly realm is. Next is called Bhuvar-loka, Mahar-loka, Jana-loka, Tapa-loka, Satya-loka. That's the topmost planetary system in the universe, where Lord Brahma stays. White House, if you will. And below the Bhu-loka are the subterranean heavenly planets. And they're called the Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Rasa, Talatala, Rasatala, and Patala. Then he talks about Lord Anantadev. Lord Ananta is an expansion of Lord Balaram, who holds every universe on his hoods. So he holds unlimited universes on his hoods. And from his mouth he glorifies the personality of Godhead. And during universal dissolution, fire emanates to destroy everything. Then chapter 26, it's good to know where we're going. I shouldn't say where we're going, very sorry. Where I'm going, called the hellish planets. There's a whole description of them. What does it mean? What does it mean, hellish condition? It says the location of the hellish planets, the names of the different hells, the animals called rurus, punishment for, etc. What the kinds of activities we do on planet Earth, how these things come back to us as punishment, etc., etc. The punishment for illicit sex, the punishment for needlessly sacrificing animals, punishment for those who are envious serpents, both pious and impious, return to the earth. After there, back here again. So that's the fifth canto. In terms of preparing to receive what Maharaj, Parikshit Maharaj is hearing from Shukadeva Goswami, first of all, Shukadeva Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj are superlative devotees. And they have full realization of Krishna. So when they're talking to each other, they understand what's happening. But for us, it may not be very clear. For one reason it won't be clear is because Shukadeva Goswami is talking about 4 different models of description of the universe simultaneously. And we'll see tomorrow in the video. There is the planisphere model, there is the flat earth model, talks about the sun around the zodiac, the realm of the demigods, etc. So that's what's happening. Second, the dimensions that he talks about are so unusual, right? For us, a person who's about 7 feet tall is quite unusual. You probably see him in Ripley's Believe It or Not, or whatever, some record, tallest man on planet, 8 feet, whatever. But it talks about trees that are 8,000 miles high, 80,000 miles high, 800,000 miles high. And the demigods have these dimensions, they're like this, and they can travel from here and there. One of the things Shukadeva Goswami will describe is relative motion, or the so-called Einstein's theory of relativity. He describes right here. It's way before Einstein figured it out. What is relative motion, relative perspectives? All of that is here. He also talks about multi-dimensional travel. We hear, right? This sage went from earth to the heavens and then came back. Narada Muni moved from this planetary system to that planetary system. When Bhima was poisoned, he fell into the river and he was transported to the Nagalokas, the subterranean heavenly realm. How'd you get there? When we get into a river, well, we can't get there. By yogic power, there is access to multidimensional travel. And that's being discussed here. So for us, we come from a educational background, our schooling system, that is so mechanistic. And to a large extent, it is quite dogmatic too. This is how things are, and anything else, we poo-poo the whole thing. And we're coming from there. We're coming from learning that the universe is structured in a particular way. It is a what we call heliocentric universe. Heliocentric means the sun is at the center of everything, and the planets, including the earth, move around the sun. But the Bhagavatam, or the Vedas, they have a geocentric model. Everything is centered around the earth, and all the planets are moving around the earth. So which is true? Actually, both are true. Because when you talk of relative motion, whether you're standing outside the universe and looking at everything moving, or you're on earth and see everything moving, it's a matter of relative motion. There's a beautiful description of relative motion coming up as well. And he uses simple language, not complicated scientific jargon and terminology that confuses persons. He uses ants on a potter's wheel. So here's a little preview. Suppose the potter's wheel, you know what's a potter's wheel, right? If the potter's wheel is moving in an anti-clockwise direction, and there are two ants walking, or an ant walking on the potter's wheel, but walking in clockwise direction, what direction is the ant moving in? Depends on speed, exactly. So while the ant is moving anti-clockwise on the wheel, the ant is moving clockwise on the wheel itself. So it depends. So the planets are also moving like that. The sun is moving in a direction, and the other planets are moving around the sun in a different direction. So it's like this, and it's moving like that. And he talks about relative motion. And what you will see depends on where you're positioned. If you're also on the potter's wheel, you will see counterclockwise direction. If you're standing outside the wheel, you will see the clockwise direction. So we are coming from a mechanistic background where for years and years and years we've studied how the universe is structured and how the different planets have numbers instead of names, right? N4362. that's a planet. We have names like that, but here we have wonderful names. Janaloka, Maharloka, Tapaloka. Then that's one. Another is, we have been convinced that life exists only on planet Earth and the rest of the universe is quite vacant. And we'll hear from the 5th canto that the entire universe is heavily populated by living entities all over the place. Like, why would Krishna create an entire universe so big and have only living beings on Earth? Doesn't make sense. It's like a void. But it describes the different realms, who lives there, what they do, how to get there, what are their activities, etc. So that's another conception that we have to, be ready to adjust according to what we're reading in Bhagavatam. And overall, if we don't understand what is being discussed, the nuances, the intricacies of things, it's all right. At least the realization we can get is, wow, how wonderfully Krishna has created this whole material cosmos and how we are stuck in it and how it is important to lead our lives in such a way that we get out of it. If that's the conclusion, or at least that's the appreciation, I think we've done a good job for ourselves. So that's, in one sense, very exciting. And I promise, if we watch the video multiple times and we read along, it will make sense. If you read without that video, it's quite. We have to rely so much on our individual visualization of it. The devotees like Sadaputta Prabhu, late Sadaputta Prabhu, and others, they've spent many years. Sadaputta Prabhu was a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and he had done his PhD in mathematics from Cornell. And Srila Prabhupada had apparently given him the service to study the 5th canto carefully and explain it. So he spent many years researching 5th canto, Surya Siddhanta, which talks about the movements of the sun, astrological book, so thick, and the different Vedas, the different scientists, the different acharyas and different sampradayas, what they have written, and they all knew this. He compiled all of that and made a video, beautiful video, to explain it in simple language. Another thing to remember as we study 5th canto is a question to ask ourselves. In this postmodern era, where we are making so much advancement in the fields of science, technology, and space exploration, we have very fantastic instruments, the Hubble telescope, NASA, the great scientists, all of them. And how many billions and billions and billions of dollars are spent in trying to learn what's in the universe. They take measurements, they send lasers, and the lasers come back, and accordingly they can measure distances of the planets between each other, all of that. And their information is something that we are constantly adjusting. With every passing new year, there's an adjustment in the data. Oh, we actually thought that the sun was so far, but now we realize it's only this far. We thought something, and now we have, it's always new information that's being gathered and shared. Thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, millions of years ago, the sages who wore nothing but a loincloth sat under a tree and knew all of this information of how the universe was structured. And their information, what we hear now, was so accurate that with all the research we are doing, we're getting close to that information. When Drutakarma Prabhu was here, he said, whether you take the geocentric model or the heliocentric model, modern data measurements shows the difference between the Vedic measurements and the modern measurements is a factor of 2. That's the difference. And he said in astronomical scales, a factor of 2 really doesn't matter so much. They're not that bad. So after spending so much time, money, effort, research, you get the same data that they knew sitting under a tree. This is the benefit of what is called descending knowledge. And ascending knowledge wastes time, wastes money, wastes effort, and there's no guarantee that we're getting the right information. So Prabhupada would often use 2 stories to tell us this. The first is how to know who's your father. So in the ascending system of knowledge, you have to do some experiments to find out who the father is. I would describe it if you like. Why not? So I have to know who my father is, and I don't know. So what I would do is I'd start with some assumptions. Our expert in research design is sitting there, so don't correct me. But roughly speaking, I have to assume, for beginning, that my father should be at least 17 years older than I am. But if he was a mischievous fellow in college, then probably 13 years older than I am, 13 or 14. I don't know. But I'm assuming at least 17 years older than I am. So all the men on this planet that are at least 17 years older than I am are possibilities that they're my father. Correct? Okay. Now I have to be able to reach every one of those men and get a DNA sample. What are some challenges if I were to do that? John? Okay, an order by court. Huh? Yeah, they have to agree to give their DNA sample. Okay. What else? Cost. How costly would it be to get all men 17 years older than I am? We can't measure. Do we have that money? Okay, suppose someone says, I'll sponsor. Himanshu said he'll sponsor the research. He can, if he wants to. So he says he'll sponsor the research. So then what else? Time. How long will it take to get DNA sample from all these men? Huh? Yeah. What else? I don't know which order to go in, right? Which country should I go first? What did you say? I don't know which order. I don't know where this man will be, in which country. I could say roughly let me start with the country I was born in, but there's no guarantee. You could be an immigrant and gone to some other country. So the order in which I start will influence the time, the money. Another problem is, how do I know he's not dead? Right? And even if he's alive, by the time I reach him, there's no guarantee that he'll be alive. And even if, so what's the probability? Very, very, very low. Even if I do, I have to be alive by the time I get to him as well. And after all this, if I know and I say, oh, Daddy, so money spent, time spent, effort spent, and I don't have access to all these men because he may be in jail. Who knows? Possible. And so Prabhupada would say it's such a useless way to go about knowing who the father is. What's the easiest way? Ask the mother, who's my father? You don't spend any time, you don't spend any money, it's no effort, and it's the right information. This is called descending system of knowledge. The mother knows and she says. The teacher knows, he gives it to the disciple. Very simple. Versus the research methodology, what we call the ascending system of knowledge. So the Bhagavatam is giving us descending system. Another one His Prabhupada would talk about Dr. Frog. And he would say that there was a frog. He was living in a well. The well was 3 feet in diameter, and he was very happy in that well. One day, another frog jumped in. And he said, "Oh, welcome to my well. Who are you?" He said, "My name is Dr. Frog. I have a PhD." "Oh, really? Where are you coming from?" He said, "I'm coming from the Pacific Ocean." "Oh, how big is that ocean?" "It's very big." "Bigger than my well?" So the other frog laughed. "Oh, what do you mean bigger than your well? It's very big." "How big? Twice this well?" "No, bigger." 10 times this well? So this fellow who's in the well is trying to estimate the size of the Pacific Ocean on the basis of his parameters. He only knows the well. Oh, 10 times? No, much bigger. 1,000 times? Oh, no, much bigger. 10,000 times? No. Million times. And his Prabhupada said that he took such a deep breath and expanded his chest to show how big, and that he burst and died. So we have certain references. Our sense of distance, time, size is very limited. So when we hear that there are demigods who are this tall and that big and they travel like this, we might say mythology. So many people say, "Oh, Indian mythology. They have a demigod who has an elephant head. They have someone who's like that. They have this demigod. They have the apsaras, the maidens up in the heavenly realm. And there are the nagas, the snakes." This must be mythology. It actually is not true. They're used as parables, stories to keep children from doing mischief and go to bed at night. Or most of it are, what's that called? Only symbolic? No. Some people say Adam and Eve is not that really they were Adam and Eve, it's just a all of that, but there's a word for it. Starts with me? No, starts with a P, I think. P? No. Boy, it's missing me. Whatever. You get the idea. That it's not real, it's all symbolic, it's meant to say something. Parables. Parable, yes, but there's something else. No, I'm missing the word. I'll let you know if I know. I'll come back 4 weeks later and tell you what it is. Like that. So we might reject it. This is not for me. Nice stories. I'll tell my son. But it's not that. It's Vedic knowledge. That is, and the second thing, or the third thing is that this knowledge is realized versus some other which is not realized. We're still searching for the truth. In the ascending system, we're only searching for the truth. In the descending system, the truth is already realized. So that's how the structure of this section of Bhagavatam is, and how we go about it. Okay, that's the preparation. So I'll read the summary of the 16th chapter, a description of Jambudvipa. While describing the character of Maharaj Priyavrata and his descendants, Shukadeva Goswami also described Meru mountain and the planetary system known as Bhumandala. Bhumandala is like a lotus flower, and its 7 islands are compared to the whirl of the lotus. The place known as Jambudvipa is in the middle of that whirl. In Jambudvipa, there is a mountain known as Sumeru, which is made of solid gold. The height of this mountain is 84,000 yojanas, of which 16,000 yojanas are below the earth. Its width is estimated to be 32,000 yojanas at its summit and 16,000 yojanas at its foot. 1 yojana equals approximately 8 miles. So 84,000 times 8. 672,000 miles is the Mount Meru, Sumeru. On the southern side of the land known as Ilavrita Varsha, remember Ilavrita Varsha, which later became known as Bharata Varsha, which is land of India, or the whole planet Earth as they say. On the southern side of the land known as Ilavrita Varsha are the mountains known as Himavan, the Himalayas, Hemakuta and Nishadha. And on the northern side are the mountains Nila, Sveta, Shringa. Similarly, on the eastern and western side are the Malayavan and Gandhamadana, 2 large mountains. Surrounding Sumeru mountain are 4 mountains known as Mandara, Meru Mandara, Suparshva and Kumuda, each 10,000 yojanas long and 10,000 yojanas high. You've seen a mountain that's 80,000 miles high? On these 4 mountains there are trees 1,100 yojanas high. A mango tree, a rose apple tree, a kadamba tree and a banyan tree. There are also lakes full of milk, honey, sugarcane juice and pure water. These lakes can fulfill all desires. There are also gardens named Nandana, Chitrarata, Vibhrajaka and Sarvato Bhadra. On the side of the Suparshva mountain is a Kadamba tree with streams of honey flowing from its hollows, and on the Kumuda mountain there is a banyan tree named Shatavalsa, from whose roots rivers flow containing milk, yogurt and many other desirable things. Surrounding Sumeru mountain, like filaments of a whorl of a lotus, are 20 mountain ranges known as Kuranga, Kurara, Kushumbha, Vaikanka and Trikuta. To the east of the Sumeru are mountains Jatara and Devakuta. To the west are Pavana and Paryartra. And to the south are Kailasha and Karavira. And to the north are Trishringa and Makara. These 8 mountains are about 18,000 yojanas long and 2,000 yojanas wide and 2,000 yojanas high. On the summit of Mount Sumeru is Brahmapuri, the residence of Lord Brahma. Each of its 4 sides is 10,000 yojanas long. Surrounding Brahmapuri are the cities of King Indra and 7 other demigods. These cities are 1/4 the size of Brahmapuri. That is this chapter. So I'm not going to start any verse because it's already 8:30. But you get a sense of what to expect. It's fascinating. And we can learn how Krishna's wonderfully manifested it all. And most importantly, how to get out of all of this. Right? How to get out of this is the most important meditation. So Sadaputa Prabhu describes that the size of a universe is this. If you the size of the universe in terms of distances, he says, is our universe, which is one of the smallest universe, its diameter is 4 billion miles. And the universe has certain material coverings. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, etc. Mind, intelligence, false ego, coverings. And each covering is 10 times in diameter than the previous covering. So it's described that if you take the size of the universe in scale, what is 4 billion miles wide, into a 1-inch ball bearing, if you take that as the size of the universe, then the coverings are the distance roughly between Chicago and Cleveland. That's how thick the coverings are for a 1-inch ball bearing. And we are inside that very tiny speck. And the only way to get out of it is to chant Hare Krishna. There's no other way. We're trapped inside a universe. And we're trapped not by shackles of, metal or anything. We're bound by shackles of karmic reactions, and which we're doing. In fact, it said that by our actions, we are strengthening the shackles that bind us in this world. And we are free to not do so through the process of devotional service. Okay, any questions, comments, anything? If not, have a wonderful time studying for the next 4 weeks. And by Krishna's grace, when we return, we'll join you and continue from there. Any questions or comments? Mathuresh Prabhu. Tomorrow morning. Is that right? Tomorrow morning, Daita is going to do the class and he'll show the video. What we discussed was, and Gokulananda Prabhu is there, and he will also chime in how he would like to do, that if you do the video, if you just see it once, it won't stick necessarily. So different days, you take sections of it and hear it, small pieces, hear it, read it like that. Yeah, something like that. However he'd like to do it too. He's also going to speak on it. But the video will be very helpful. It's nicely done, very nicely done. It's a 40-minute video, and talks about the 4 different models that Shukadeva Goswami is describing. So very exciting. Anything else? Okay, thank you for your patience and kindness. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Oh, you're welcome. I didn't speak anything else. We didn't even do the verse.
I got good news for you.
Yeah, how was the stress test? Were you stressed out?
You did very well.
Oh, good.
Yes.
The heart is strong.
Yeah, I mean, there's something that's a little different in now, but it's still strong. So
Okay.
that's the good part.
Good.
Yeah.
So he suggested you could travel?